Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to those of you hardy souls who have joined us after lunch. We appreciate it. In some cases, still working on lunch. Thank you, Len. Anyway, we're back for our afternoon sessions at PDMI West, and we're going to start by leading off with this wonderful group of women talking about influencer marketing and the latest and greatest in that area. Are we on clicker? There we go. As always, our educational sessions are presented by Blue Water. We thank them for their support, and they have a message for us before we get started.
Hey guys, Randy Jackson here.
Welcome to the future of pain relief.
At Tommy John, a lot goes into our underwear before you do.
But now I've found my bubbly side with SodaStream.
Ouch! Philips Air Fryer is the original and the very best.
Kid Rock!
Hey, why is everybody so loud in infomercials?
But wait, there's more!
Yeah. Woo!
So yes, you can visit Blue Water inside the meeting hall, table 4. And with that, I wanted to let everybody know that unfortunately Kayla Markham from Dude Wipes was called away due to a family emergency and can't be here today. That said, we have an incredible trio led by Lindsey, Carnett, CEO and President of Marketing Maven, and I'm going to let the group introduce themselves from here. Take it away.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm Lindsey Carnett. Today is my agency's 16th birthday, so that is exciting. I'm happy to be here with you today. So we're a full-service integrated marketing agency focused on market research, marketing strategy, and then implementation, which is including social media marketing, influencer marketing, digital, PR, etc. So our panelists today are Ariel Brooks and also my client, Whitney, from PanTheryx. So ladies, if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Sure. I'm Ariel Brooks Benz. I am the owner and founder of BB3 Advertising. So we are an omni-channel direct response agency. We focus on omni-channel campaigns that really are about scaling at a very profitable margin. So that's sort of our key focus.
Great. And I am Whitney Callahan. I am the marketing director at PanTheryx. We are a nutraceutical company specializing in digestive and immune health supplements. I have worked in the digital marketing and e-commerce segments for over 15 years, and it has evolved quite a lot over time, and influencer has really taken off in the last many years, as you all know, so we will talk about some of that.
So let's jump in. Why influencer marketing? When we were chatting earlier, Ariel, do you want to mention what you said? Basically, if you don't do influencer marketing.
Yeah, so it's essentially your digital business card in this day and age. So if you're not showing up on socials right now, when people go to find your brand, it has no social proof. And that's something that's so key in this day and age. So that's part of the reason why our clients are all turning to influencer as part of their marketing strategy.
And Whitney, when I met you, there had not been influencer marketing done so much at PanTheryx, because PanTheryx is like an ingredient provider first and then finished product. And so I am interested in having you share, what did you first think when you heard about influencer marketing from somebody that hadn't had that as a background?
Yeah, so our company, as you said, operated a lot in the B2B space, and we had recently purchased a consumer brand, and so, you know, naturally we kind of got into the influencer space. I had done a little bit with it before, but this was the most involved that I got in it, and we've used it quite a lot to educate our consumers on our products, our ingredients, the benefits around them, and to show kind of like when you have a problem that there is a solution for it, so problem aware, not knowing that there is a solution, creating, you know, social proof and trust. So yeah, it's really become an integral part of our marketing strategy, and we've, you know, had to adjust and set aside budgets and make sure that, you know, we're taking that into account as we're creating our marketing plans.
So some of in terms of the marketing overview, things that we look at is engagement rate, influencer personas, and then what type of content is being created. And I think, Ariel, you can kind of shed some more light on those topics.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of really great tools out in the marketplace that allow us to really understand not only what the influencer is able to do in terms of their content and if your brand aligns with them, but also what their audience profiles are. So when we're looking at sort of what we do and who we're going to contract for clients, there's a lot of key pieces that we want to be looking at from how do they perform, how do they align, what does their stats look like, their engagement rates, their views, and then their authenticity scores, but then also down to what kind of content do they produce, and are those content pieces right for the platform and the KPIs that we're working with.
So this is a good segue to look at personas. So Whitney was really helpful to us in developing out a persona overview and to really understand who is the target audience for each of the products. One of the products is TrueBiotics, the other one is Releasium, and so if you want to give an overview of those brands, because we're going to do a little bit of case study type information here today, so I want you to understand this is the TrueBiotics product, and then this is the Releasium product. What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so TrueBiotics, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it was, in the past it was owned by Bayer, and we took it over from them. And at the time it was just probiotic capsules essentially. And so we developed like 4 or 5 new products, and a couple of those were women's products, one being a gummy and one being a capsule. And so the slide you see with the women on it, a lot of the persona work came into play during the R&D phase, so marketing research, research and discovery of the product development essentially, and thinking about what ages are our products hitting, and what are their needs, and what do the ingredients offer to these different personas. So a lot of this work was done in the background prior to launching these products, and then we were able to take these and really infuse them into our influencer campaigns and help drive what types of influencers we would select for promoting these products. And as you can see, they kind of speak to a couple of different age ranges and have different benefits as well. And then in some of the campaigns, we were able to really solidify some really good influencers that were great at showing kind of overall wellness, lifestyle. Torche was one of those. And so, yeah, to get kind of people to feel connected to the product through certain influencers that we identified.
And the persona exercise, I think a lot of times gets overlooked by brands. They'll just say, oh, we target men this age range, or we target women this age range. But the persona really builds out who are they, what are their interests, what type of media do they consume, what is their personality style, and all of those details really help create the ideal influencer, like Whitney is mentioning. And I don't know what you do for persona development with your clients.
Very similar, and I think that it's so key because unlike traditional mediums, we have a lot more flexibility in influencer marketing. To your point about education. So when we're selecting them and we're going through these personas, we're finding all different kinds of personalities that are going to align with these different personas that we're working with. So it's much different to a traditional like TV or a CTV or even a digital buy in that sense.
That actually sparked something that we worked with this company called the Face Socks, and they were these faces that are on socks. You guys have probably seen these online, and it was hilarious because the voice of the brand was so sassy that we had this one influencer that all he had was sassy content, and he said, "You want to get your boyfriend the best gift? This is the whatever, angry whatever hotline." And then it was like he had this pair of socks, but like he sent it to his ex with his face on it. And it was this funny piece of content that went viral, but we wouldn't have known to go to him if the brand didn't tell us, hey, we're looking for really funny, sassy type of content. Then we can think, who's the sassiest influencer that we can think of? So if it is, persona development, also think about brand voice and what is the brand personality. All right, next question. what's different about working with influencers across social platforms? So it's not all equal. And TikTok is different than LinkedIn, which is different than
Like, what are the other
Instagram,
ones?
YouTube influencers, et cetera. And so they each have their use case, but talk to us a little bit. Ariel, you can get started on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that each of them have their own place in a strategy depending on your brand and your ultimate, and consumer. But some of the differences, for example, TikTok is really big for education, and it's also a shopping platform. People know that, so the content you're constantly getting content around that. So I think that's something that makes it unique. Whereas if you're looking at Instagram is more about brand aesthetic, right? So we do a lot of content there that we think is going to be very shareable. It's got a really pretty vibe, whereas like TikTok is much more real. And then you look at something like YouTube, where you're looking at credibility, right? You're working with people that have longer format shows. People watch their shows regularly. People go there to find out how to do things. So again, each of these platforms have a unique benefit, and ultimately when we're looking at where to place, it all backs into that goal and that KPI that we're looking for. But how about you?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. I would say tone of voice is a big one. Obviously something like LinkedIn is going to be more professional versus what you can kind of get away with on TikTok. And then you think about your own brand voice and, what range do you have to work within with that? I saw something that said, think about it, the different social media platforms, like how many beers you've had. So LinkedIn, maybe, you haven't had any beers, and then TikTok, you've had a bunch of beers. And then Instagram might be somewhere in between. But for us working in supplements, you do have to kind of, be careful about towing that line a little bit, because you can't steer too far from your message and get too silly with it. But it is something good to think about, because even with something as serious as supplements, I think there's always angles to get creative with that capture people on certain platforms as well.
And I think also, all awesome points. There's also a way to go from TikTok to Instagram, but not from Instagram to TikTok too.
Yeah.
So the way that the content is originated is also critical, because like you said, TikTok is really entertaining and it can be a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, and which can translate well into Instagram. And then if you took Instagram content and put it on TikTok, it would fall flat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think, and some of the TikTok influencers that we've worked with are less expensive than some of the Instagram influencers. And so the way that we've leveraged that price point is to be able to contract them for TikTok, get rights to use their content across other mediums for the advertising part, and get the content for cheap, and then put budget behind it across platforms.
Exactly.
I don't know if that's a tactic that
Yes, that's
you
definitely
agree
a
with.
strategy.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we did some of that where, their following was mainly on TikTok, and they were kind of either just getting started or didn't resonate as much on Instagram, but we would just throw it in there to, have it, and then of course run the ads as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this kind of gives an overview of what Whitney mentioned in terms of, like, for True Biotics, what the strategy was to build awareness, drive sales. Do you want to talk a little bit, Whitney, about I know we're going to get into multi-channel in a minute, but just the overview of, like, what was the landscape for you? What were the channels that you're looking to target? Because you were a lot of places, like rolled out Amazon, and then rolled out retail distribution, rolled out this. So, like, it was kind of an evolution.
Yeah, so with True Biotics, we didn't have direct-to-consumer directly on a website, but we did have Amazon, and it actually is still a really large channel for us. And retail was also a really big channel, and so those were the couple that we wanted to support. I know we're going to get more into retail, but that's an interesting one to try and measure with influencer marketing, but I still think it's key to use influencers to kind of help raise the awareness of products at retail. So yeah, we were able to use attribution links to drive click-throughs to Amazon and measure those. So yeah, we had a good successful campaign across a lot of different drivers there.
Perfect. All right, so let's talk about micro versus nano versus macro. There's a lot of terms that get thrown around, and to one person it means this, to another person it means that, to another person it means that. And so I've seen a lot of timid people in meetings like, well, how many is the micro influencer? And nobody wants to give the actual number. So Ariel, what does your chart tell us?
Yeah. So this is roughly a kind of industry standard, right? So we start off with nano influencers, which are fantastic. They have smaller followings, so they have really engaged communities. They produce beautiful content, and they're very inexpensive to engage with. So nanos are one of our favorite influencer size. Next, you go up to micro. Micro is generally 10K to 100,000. They're going to have larger communities, but they still have high authenticity scores. Again, they're probably still responding to a lot of their comments and DMs, and that relationship engagement is really good for trust. And then you go into mid and macro, where you're going to be in that 100,000 to 1 million, right? And that is increasingly becoming a spot in the marketplace where people are less sure to go into. It used to be really profitable for brands to go in and work with the larger ones, macros, and even megas that are, you know, 1 million plus, because it had great brand visibility. Unfortunately, because a lot of people in that space engage with a lot of brands, there's an increased distrust, right, and a lack of credibility these days. So what we generally try to do is we do a mix depending on KPIs across those different tiers.
Yep, I agree with everything that you just mentioned. And
Yeah.
I think one example of using nano influencers too is just their flexibility.
Yeah.
We worked with a diagnostics client with a diagnostics tool for when you're pregnant. And so we had to find nano influencers that were between 6 to 7 weeks pregnant. This is very, very hard. This is like
Very hard to
This
do.
is like needle in the haystack stuff. So find nano influencers who are between 6 to 7 weeks pregnant. They want to know the fetal sex of their baby, and try and contract them for a 12-month period of time so that you can stay with them throughout their whole entire pregnancy journey, where, you know, their first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, and then they're like, this content's getting really exhausting and I'm so tired. And you're like, but we need it by this date, please. So it is a journey to work with, depending on what your campaign is, but you can get, you know, like this is like $750 for a year's worth of content from a nano influencer that then you're putting ad budget behind, and you can do a Q&A with them, like build out pages on a website for blog posts. Like this content has miles and miles of coverage with it. So we're gonna look at some of these micro influencers and nano influencers that Whitney has used, and you can tell us who some of these people are and what type of content they provided.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of say we leaned more into the nano and micro influencer due to budget, but also engagement. You know, a lot of the smaller accounts have high engagement and a lot more kind of personal feeling relationships with their smaller group of following. And just to mention to your point, I think with the larger influencers, everything is changing constantly. You know, someone literally like a week ago could go viral and start getting up to, you know, 500,000 followers, and then they're trying to, you know, promote a bunch of different businesses. So always kind of keep that in mind and look at the longevity. But for instance, we had some really successful campaigns here with Torche. She's both at the top photos there, I think. Really beautiful aesthetic content, just kind of, you know, connecting with the consumer, giving that overall really nice aesthetic look on Instagram. And then down below was a mom who, you know, was showing the Probiotics gummies. I think she even, or the women's capsules, and then I think she included some of the kids' gummies because she had children. There's a lot of like moms and children and babies that have big followings on Instagram, and people connect with them over all different reasons, products or journey, you know, motherhood journey and things like that. But you can kind of see some of the engagement rates here where really high and, quite a lot of views for a couple of these posts that we got, over 35,000. And I don't think we have the engagement rate listed, but it was well over the 2. That was kind of the industry standard here. And so these are the types of people I would say too, if you go back with potentially another brand, if it works, or another product, or a campaign for the same product in the future, you could use them over again, and then their following has seen your brand and is familiar with it as well.
And this slide with the numbers, I call this just the icing on the cake, because the real value is Torche's content. She was a top performer here in terms of engagement, but to take this content, turn it into a digital ad by slicing it and dicing it, and then putting ad budget behind it and getting it out to a larger audience based on your digital advertising is what drives the product sales. This is good for building brand credibility and engagement, et cetera. But the other part to actually drive the sales is when you put the digital ad budget behind it.
That is a wonderful point, and I don't know, I think we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I will chime in about that here because we did these campaigns a little while back, and I remember them doing really well when we ran ads behind them, and that's something you definitely want to make sure to do, is take the organic postings and run targeted ads with them. But the industry standard for health and wellness on social media like Facebook and Instagram is like 1.6, and we were getting like 8 to 9% click-through rates on the ads that we did with the TrueBiotics campaign. So really, really worked well for us.
People trust people.
Yeah, user-generated content.
All right, so let's talk about retail. I'm curious, Ariel, have you had clients that have product launches in retail, and what have you done to drive retail?
So I think obviously there's a couple different ways. So one is we have actually worked with a brand. It was a hair care brand. Obviously some brands lend themselves better to these types of promotional events. But they were in the UK, and we were able to set up a hair salon in the actual department store when they launched in the department store. So then they invited some actually large influencers. So they were definitely on the macro side for the visibility, because it was a brand play for them. And they had celebrity hairstylists like Chris Appleton come and do the girls' hair in salon with the backdrop of them being in this quite posh environment. So when we were able to do something like that, it was twofold. So first of all, within the store, we were driving a lot of attention to the area where we had the products. But then also every one of these influencers was live streaming or taking loads of content of what they were doing. And that was being posted and then being reposted by the brand and then being run as ads for the fact that they were in that store. So there was a lot of different ways that we could kind of maximize the value of those influencers in that launch.
Now that you mentioned live streaming, just recently at Expo West back in March for a natural product company, we had some live streaming happening, but some of it was even on LinkedIn to try and target the retail buyers to come to their booth for that. So the live streaming, I think, is a underutilized tactic with influencers.
Yeah, we're going to see that more, I think, and certain platforms. I think there's a lot of opportunity. For example, YouTube, not a lot of people are doing the lives. So I think there's a real space there. And obviously TikTok is known for their lives. And we actually do, with some of our clients, they do lives quite regularly where they talk about their products and they have experts on, and that's kind of how they get that extra exposure.
Yeah, we've done some lives as well. And the nice thing about doing lives, we've done it with a couple of our KOLs and credentialed doctors to educate consumers, and then you can take that and let it live, either repurpose it as an ad or let it live on your page as well.
I think one stat that I heard for a Instagram live was about Lady Gaga, and then she did one, and it only had like 5,000 people or 500. It was like some really low number. But the thing is, don't be sad if nobody joins your Instagram live or your whatever, because it's not about who joins right at that second. It will build over time and it will grow. And so I think some people are like, what if nobody comes? I'm going to be so sad. And so then they have the fear of just being a fear of rejection. So they decide not to do it. And so I mean, if Lady Gaga only had 500 or 5,000, whatever it was, then don't be sad if only a few people come.
And it's probably worth noting that all of these platforms are going to give preferential treatment in terms of pushing your content out, the more of their bells and whistles you use. So even if you're not getting a lot of people on that live, TikTok's going to push out your content to more people. So they reward brands and accounts that essentially will use and try more of their formats. So even if you only have a couple people on, I would have them. I would take the content, slice it, dice it, put it on your website. Great for SEO, great for ads. So there's so many different ways that you can sort of make any of your content go and work harder for you. And I think the key is to just be really smart about that and make sure that you're really maximizing that.
Great point.
So, Whitney, I have up the slide for Releasium. First of all, tell us what Releasium is, and then tell us about your omni-channel footprint and how you have used influencer marketing to drive the channels.
Sure. So Releasium is our newest brand that we launched just about a year ago. Really came into market at the beginning of this year. And it is a patented ingredient that we've had for quite a while, and it's contained in a different product, but we have rebranded and remarketed it as a GLP-1 digestive support. It's mainly colostrum and antibody-rich egg. So as you guys all have probably heard about GLP-1s for weight loss, this is a huge emerging segment, and this product really helps with all the digestive side effects that tend to come along with taking GLP-1s. And we've had a lot of we've done some clinical studies with small testing groups and a lot of great reviews about this product. So this came out this year, and this slide shows kind of all the different omni-channel marketing efforts that we are running behind it, and similar to what we've done with TrueBiotics. But I will just call out, you see there's like all these different tactics, and influencer is just one of these. But I would say, it as far as budget goes, it's a shifting landscape, and so to kind of communicate that as a marketer to your leadership team, how important and how much budget should go to that. I mean, we've been taking some from traditional methods, and shifting it over to influencer, and you kind of can't look away from how important influencer marketing is online, and so they're getting it and understanding, but the real key is to make sure you have enough budget for good influencer campaigns up front, because we've run into that. You don't know how much influencers are going to cost, and I just think it creates such a great awareness and even conversion. But all of these other things are important as well. You always want to have your paid search going, your paid social media ads. But again, repurposed influencer content, we've seen so much better results than just kind of traditional paid media. And then sampling programs, digital retailer programs, and then medical KOLs, which are essentially somewhat like influencers. Well,
right.
You wanted to say something about the budget, I think.
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the key things. I think that setting the expectations in the beginning in terms of what it costs to acquire influencers and what KPIs you have and what your expectations are is so key. I know that it's harder to quantify for a lot of brands, so oftentimes it's very difficult to get those budgets off of other mediums, and but it is. I think that there's got to be not only like your cost of like acquiring and managing the process, but there should also be sort of a fund that you set aside of how much you're willing to pay, whether that be for actual deals or for additional usage rights. Because to your point, what we want to see in ads on these platforms is content that's native to the platform. That's what performs best. So we can have the most beautiful shoot of your gummies or something that was shot in a studio and cost a lot of money, and that will underperform any day to just a girl sitting there talking about her experience with it. So that content is, when you're thinking about influencer marketing, we always say it's a content-first strategy. So we really focus on what's the outcome that we want from a content, because that you put money behind, you're going to drive sales. But that does cost money because you have usage rights, and oftentimes you need to negotiate your entire contracts around that usage rights, and you want to make sure that you've put some budget on the table for that.
Let's talk about usage rights a little bit, because this used to not be a thing. The contracts used to say you can use our content in perpetuity worldwide for whatever you want. And over the years, they've just crept up and up and up. And especially as influencers have gotten managers too, because the managers want a cut of whatever the influencer gets. And so this is one of the strategies too with working with nano influencers, that they don't actually know how much they should be charging for usage rights.
Yeah, it's probably worth noting that it is the wild, wild west. So there is no, if you have a CPM, this is what it costs. You can have a nano influencer with 4,000 followers charge you $5,000 for a post, and you can have somebody with 50,000 be totally okay with $500. It makes no sense, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. You just have to go with whatever they value their sort of channel as. But yeah, that's something that we've seen change. I think there's the management companies, I think, have increased. Also category specific. So like we find B2B to be far more expensive than if we're doing beauty. So like there's a lot of these different levers that change that pricing. So it's something that we always contend with, and I think that the usage rights are getting harder and harder to get just without payment.
100%. We do have the question about what are the difference between managing influencer programs in-house versus through an agency, and so I'm curious, like, do you think that you have the bandwidth to, like, or what sort of resources do you think that you would need in-house to run an influencer marketing program?
You tell me, because you're the one with the resources. No, we definitely did not have a dedicated team or person to run our campaign. So we worked with Lindsey's agency over quite a number of years here to utilize their expertise, their resources, their tools, their negotiating contracts, rates, budgets, getting the content. All the while, we're still the brand. We still have the final say. We are in control and in communication. We would have meetings, but they were doing all of the heavy lifting in the background for us with, contracting with really in the beginning, sourcing the right influencers, identifying and sourcing from the information we had given them, and then contracting, getting the content, making sure that, they negotiated proper budgets, and in the contracts, these usage rights were built in, or editing rights as far as, requesting changes to the content. So this is all stuff that as the brand we're involved with, but an agency will really have the tools and expertise to kind of go out there and present you everything on a platter so that it makes it easier and quicker for you to have a successful campaign. So it was invaluable to us to have an agency do it.
The reason why we put this question in here was because Kayla, who's not here today from Dude Wipes, actually does this all herself. I mean, I think with a team internally.
Yeah.
So she was telling us what it's like for her, and I was hoping to hear more.
Yeah,
but
well, I mean, I guess I can speak to it a little bit because although we are an agency, we actually work with a few brands that have in-house and agency.
Okay.
So so I'll take one example. They have in-house, they have about 14 people that manage influencers. So,
wow.
And when people think that influencer marketing shouldn't be a part of your budget, I mean, this company just got acquired by L'Oreal for $1 billion about 2 months ago.
Wow.
And they bought them because L'Oreal said they were unable to replicate their influencer strategy. So it's really key, and it is going to continue to be really key in businesses. So when we came on board to work with them initially to take over their UK market, they were in the US and they had a pretty good handle on that, but they needed somebody to do the UK. So we were able to work with their in-house team as an agency, and we were able to see both sides of it. So some of the benefits of an agency is the tools, like the overhead that it requires and the manpower it requires to send out the amount of invites that you need to get the numbers, to do that research. It's a very manual process still, even though there's great AI tech behind it. It still takes a lot of time. And what they found is that they wanted their team to really focus on the higher sort of strategy, how do they build out their ambassador program once we sourced really great influencers. So we kind of worked in tandem, and they leaned on us for that tech and that competitive and that ability to source, and then we were able to kind of hand off to them to kind of maintain and really nurture those relationships beyond that.
That's awesome to hear that perspective. I'll mention one other thing that I've heard from clients about paying influencers. This is the biggest pain because the nano influencers are like, send me the money via PayPal. And then you have other people that's like, Zelle me funds. And so if you have a huge company with very strict billing processes, they're like, no, we don't Zelle people money. No, we don't do PayPal. And so that is a huge, or, you know, and then you have to 1099 all these people too.
That's true.
So that, like, from an accounting perspective, it's a beast. And then to keep track of all the usage rights too, like we have a master spreadsheet with, okay, the ad started on this date. They have a 3-month period of ad utilization from exactly this date. So this is the exact date that it expires. And then you have to re-up with the usage time frame or drop all the ads. So some of those things have been the things that I've seen too from the brand perspective, that they're like, no, we don't want to take that on. You guys handle that piece.
Yeah, it's a lot of legwork. I think that if you have people that are dedicated and they do it day in and day out, and we're working across multiple clients, I think that's probably also a big benefit of an agency, is that because we're working with lots of brands, we have a lot of contracts going at once. We also know what we can negotiate. We've pre-negotiated with a lot of people. So like you do get a lot of benefit from that sort of knowledge pool and just the legwork. It's a lot of herding cats.
It's not like upfronts, but it is, they believe that they could do future work with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about how we can repurpose content, because we talked a little bit about, okay, this could be the gift that keeps on giving if you have appropriate rights to their content. But do you want to talk about this slide?
Sure, yeah. So one of the, again, going back to the content first strategy, what we try to do as soon as we kind of have that first conversation with brands is we talk about all the different content utilization opportunities. Obviously paid ads we've talked about, that's a clear winner. But also we've seen better click-through rates on email marketing that use the content in their emails. We also see that on Amazon. So increasingly Amazon is doing much more in terms of what they want to see, and having that UGC really, really helps out with that strategy. And then we also see it just being placed on websites as social proof. Everything from having a ticker at the bottom of a website that just shows the amount of people that are in, but we also see it in product descriptions. So you'll have like the glam shots, and then you'll have like 5 or 6 influencers talking about the product right there on the product page. All of those things can be SEO'd, obviously helpful for your website to have more video content, but it really does, it builds trust around your brand.
Whitney, how else have you used influencer content?
Mainly in these ways. I mean, again, the social media paid campaigns are the big one, but Amazon, I would say, is second after that. Some use in website and email marketing too, but yeah, it's different than showing like a static ad on Amazon that shows, you know, your product features versus someone literally speaking in an ad in a user-generated content piece talking about it. So again, it just, you know, shows that social proof. So
it's also probably worth noting that there are increasing opportunities to take your influencer content and even run it on CTV as ads.
Yeah.
So that is something that we're also basically exploring that opportunity as well. Whereas it used to be, we thought we had to do like the really nice professional, expensive, creative. Oh, that's not anybody's area of expertise here, but we are starting to see a movement in that direction as well, which is really cool.
Great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was literally thinking about one of our competitors. You guys may have heard of Armra Colostrum. They're huge. Done a huge awareness campaign over the last few years around colostrum, but they did that, you know, where they took some of their influencer ads and then ran them on CTV, and it's strange because you see it and you kind of feel like you're watching social media, and in a way that's kind of a good thing. It throws you off. It's not that overproduced ad, and it carries through the message and the same you know, content, video that you're seeing on social media. So I think it's kind of brilliant to use it in that way.
Yeah, and because it is different to all of the different, you know, we love it on the social platforms because it fits the feed, it fits what we want, but actually on CTV, it's a showstopper because you're like, wait, what?
Exactly.
Like, I'm not looking at this screen, I'm looking at that screen.
Yeah,
You
and they're
shouldn't be there.
speaking directly to you. It's not overproduced and acted as much feeling.
We had one client actually cast the influencer that he loved this content, and he was so likable and everything, and did a normal production, normal casting, everything, and this influencer got the job to be the main spokesperson for the product on traditional everything too.
Well, I mean, I think that also because we're seeing so many influencers start to build out their own brands, I think that that's the direction we're going to start to see. And also partial ownership. So a lot of people, it used to be collabs, like where you would have a jewelry brand would work with a kind of pseudo celebrity and influencer, and the power of the both of them was a crossover. You get to cross over their audiences. But what we're seeing now is that's, they're actually building their own brands, or companies are giving them a percentage in their business to be part of like the founding team, so that they can actually really actively bank on those really, really large numbers of viewership and engagement that they get on social.
One more thing I'll add for this, for the multi-channel assets, and tying in the retail component, working with Costco influencers, Home Depot influencers, like Amazon influencers also. We've had some clients that are from this DRTV space, performance marketing space, where they have product in Costco, and we've used Costco influencers, and the Costco buyers are so happy about the content because it drives foot traffic in store, and it's physically showing them where in the store to go purchase the product. So like, this was a frozen seafood company in the freezer section. So they literally walk in the store, go to the freezer section, pick out the product out of the freezer section, and so people know physically where to go get it. But they're using that Costco influencer content and put it in their sales deck when they go and do their brand presentations. And that's just like, music to their ears from a buyer perspective. Like, yes, keep bringing the people exactly in this section.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's retail support on a level that we've never been able to do. Again, that's the really fun thing about influencer marketing, is that there's no parameters, there's no red tape. If you can think of a good idea, you can execute it. Whereas with others, you've got long lead times. You can turn something around within a week. You can have something happening really fast, and you can change the messaging up so regularly depending on what that feedback loop is.
Exactly. So we'll talk a little bit about affiliate codes, promo codes, whitelisting, dark posting. What is whitelisting, dark posting? How would you explain it to everybody?
I think probably the easiest way of explaining it is you have access to the influencer's account, and you're putting paid money behind the influencer's content. So essentially, you're able to utilize their audience, and what that ends up looking like as a consumer is, it just oftentimes it'll say promoted post on the top, but it'll actually be your influencer who instead of your brand. There's something cool about that because it's coming from the influencer that you know, love, and follow, and oftentimes we switch off to brands online. So it kind of tries to circumvent that a little bit.
And what are the pros and cons?
You can definitely talk to your experience. So we've seen varying levels of success with it. What we try to do and what we recommend doing is that we put it out into the space organically, and then if it starts to pop off, which hopefully they do, then you would put some budget behind it and really capitalize on the momentum. And that's generally what works best. But we see varied levels of success. Sometimes it works great, and sometimes it falls flat.
Yep.
Yeah, so we haven't actually engaged in the whitelisting and dark posting yet, but we are planning to. So as I've been looking into it, I think the whitelisting, it said, obviously coming from the influencer's name versus the brand has higher click-through rates, maybe like lower CPCs. And dark posting, which you may know more about this, but I guess it's kind of posting under the influencer's account, but not to their following, right? So this sounds like something that would be really helpful for us to test different product pricings or offerings, and then as you see them kind of, the response that you get from different consumers, then you can expand on that or get your learnings and, adjust your offer in that way.
And that's something that probably worth talking about as well, is that because of the feedback loop that you get with influencer marketing, it's so different to anything else. I mean, yes, you can get comments below your paid ads and so on, But what we tend to see is people are very honest, and you get a lot of feedback. So if you take the time when you're doing your influencer marketing to read, I mean, you can use like a scraper, an AI scraper to do this. But if you go back and actually check the comments on your content, you can get a really good gauge of what was working and not working about it.
Yes. And I would say to that too, keep an eye on that, obviously,
Yes.
and engage with consumers when they write comments. We had people say, well, where can I find this, or what stores is this in, or does it do this or that? And if you can chime in as the brand and show that you're listening, I think that's very helpful as well, instead of just kind of leaving them on red.
Yeah.
And how have you used affiliate codes?
Yeah, so we love affiliate codes because it helps us measure, the success of our campaigns, and we've been able to do this in a number of different ways. So promo codes, you'll see influencers offer. I think a lot of people almost have come to expect it, and it's sort of this exchange between the influencer and their audience. They're giving them a coupon or some discount off, or them noticing that they're promoting the product that they need. And so there's that relationship there, and then the relationship between the brand and the influencer, where we can track these codes, drive more sales, and that may be direct to your website. And I mentioned before, we can do attribution links to track codes driving to Amazon as well, and then these influencers can also list them on their Amazon storefronts too. And we did these campaigns a few months back, and we're still getting sales come through with their coupon codes. So that's really, really nice. Yeah, we like that. Any way that you can track, the conversion, because a lot of influencer campaigns are kind of based around that awareness, and leadership teams are always wanting to see conversion and how far your dollar's going for them.
Yeah. So we do a couple different things. So when we're working on, for example, YouTube, we will use affiliate links in the content in the description below. So you can actually click through, click to text, or click through to the website, which is really helpful. Obviously on Instagram, you have stories where you can link out. So we use those links. They also just launched in Reels. So now if you're a verified account, you can also use affiliate links in your Reel content, which is new, which is super exciting. And then if you look at a platform like TikTok, which has its TikTok shop, they obviously have a built-in affiliate program, so that works a little bit differently. And we've used code and links, and we generally give both to our influencers, because they'll oftentimes link it, but in the content itself, they might actually tell them what the promo code is. If it's like a mommy blogger, let's say mommy25 for 25% discount, or you can click the link. And we tend to, we're response people, right? So we want to give people as many opportunities to respond as possible.
That's great.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to that, because that's important when you do the affiliate link or attribution link, because someone may not necessarily be making a purchase right off. So you can also measure, the traffic that's clicking through, the click-through rates.
We talked a little bit about negotiating usage rights, but I know, Whitney, in our pre-discussion, we talked about some influencers that say, great, for an extra $5,000, you get usage rights for 12 months, or for $2,500, you could get usage rights for 2 months, door A or door B. Yeah. And so what is the right amount of time in your opinion?
Yeah, we try to do like a minimum of 1 year with all of our content, just so we don't have to, constantly be changing it up or going and finding new influencers. And whether you use it that long or not, I still think it's good. Obviously, it depends on what your budget is and what these people are charging, but I'd say you can kind of get a reasonable amount of usage rights, or a reasonable quote from them for about a year's worth of time. And you want to run content long enough so that people are seeing it frequently, but you don't want it to get stale over time either. So I think longer than a year. We have had to go back and negotiate again after a year if we wanted to conveniently keep something running or it was performing well. But I would say a year, yeah. And a couple of months just as.
What are you seeing in terms of the ideal? If you could pick a sweet spot, if
I'm like in
you know
perpetuity.
exactly, yes, worldwide in perpetuity. Besides that,
It's probably worth actually mentioning that there are different kinds of usage rights, right? So what we tried to do is we tried to negotiate the owned and operated usage rights. So that's where you can post it to your socials, use it in your email marketing, and put it on your website. Oftentimes that's less expensive than negotiating for usage on ads or on CTV or something like that, because they know if you're running ads with their content, you're making some money, so they would like some of that, which makes sense. So when we're negotiating, we try to get the owned and operated usage rights in perpetuity.
Yep.
And then we'll negotiate the other. But oftentimes we also won't negotiate the usage rights for ads until we see if the content is great, right? Because an influencer can do amazing content for one and terrible content for another, because you have to remember, these are human beings. It's not a machine. You don't have like they're writing scripts, and it depends on how they resonate with the messaging. Depends on if they had a bad hair day, if their kids were loud in the next room and they didn't have time to, I mean, things happen, life happens in influencer marketing. So when we go and this has happened, we've contracted somebody big and we've paid them a nice penny, and then we got the content, we're like, we're not actually going to use this for anything. So I think it's really, really important to kind of think about those things when you're negotiating. But yeah, a one-year contract I think is like ideal in terms of usage rights. But again, it just depends on if we think that there's real potential to use it outside of our owned and operated property.
that's a really good point about the type of content. We had one client that was demanding, we need a NASCAR driver. And it's probably the worst content that we've ever received from anybody before. And we're like, no, and we sent it back, and they're like so offended, but it was just really.
And you can have somebody that makes okay content that just happened to be the way they shot yours was really fantastic and worked really well. So I mean, there's not a lot of like checks and balance in terms of like what you're going to get back, unfortunately.
I don't want to take too much longer because we have this will be our last question, and then Tom can do the Q&A. How do you ensure compliance with FTC disclosures and FDA regulations, especially for supplements?
Yeah, so we have to follow these FDA guidelines, regulations, talking points very closely in the health supplement industry. So we have, documents that kind of give guidelines, wording you can use, guardrails that we share with the influencers prior to them filming anything at all. But I will say that sometimes unknowingly they can record something and say things that go into this gray area of how amazing the product is or what the benefits are, and that's up to us as the brand to weigh whether we want to allow certain things to kind of go through on social media that yes, they're tied to us, they may not be coming directly from our account, but I will say up front the good thing is to negotiate in the contract being able to request edits on the content, so that you can always go back and ask them to make those changes. So for us, it hasn't been too much of a headache of a process because we kind of have, again, documents that we share out prior to them even filming, but it will kind of come into play when they sort of go off the cuff and just say whatever.
Yeah, probably also worth putting in your contract the right to remove the content. So we have that in ours as well. So they have 24 hours to take something down if they've said or posted something that doesn't align with the guidelines.
Good point. All right, Tom.
Great. Any questions from the audience?
Great job. Thank you so much. You talked a lot about B2C. You made mention 40 minutes ago about a B2B. Singularity. How does this work for B2B?
So we're seeing a big increase on our side of LinkedIn and influencers. It's really a big space. I think it's going to be a big growth area going into this year. We also see it obviously on YouTube. That's the other place. So right now on YouTube, what we try to do is we try to find people that are doing educational content around whatever that product is. So if it's a software service, for example, then we're going to want to find somebody who's a business coach or somebody that talks about entrepreneurship. On LinkedIn, we have a lot of people, let's say they're talking about AI, and so we'll put an AI app with that person, so when they're talking about it, they can talk about how they're using that within their day-to-day lives. So there's a really great opportunity. I will say it is very cost prohibitive because what we find is in the B2B space, they tend to charge much higher CPM rates. So if you look at sort of on average, maybe for a beauty influencer, you might be looking at somewhere between $14 and $40 CPM, because again, it's the Wild Wild West. When we're looking at specialized either politics or news or B2B, where you can sometimes be closer to that $70 CPM.
I'm a micro influencer on LinkedIn, by the way, and so I have so far worked with a very fancy chair company. We'll talk on the yacht, and like travel, business travel, like for hotels. So that's, yeah. So it's very Wild West, like she's saying. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have to cut this here because we got another session coming up in 20 minutes, but how about a round of applause for a wonderful conversation. I'm sure you can ask them questions as they walk out, and thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. 20 minutes from now, I'll be on stage with media outlets to wrap up the day. Thank you.